Hi, my name is Katie Welty. I will be doing the introduction and the opening statement for our discussion. To begin, I will introduce the group members, which are Mary, Cindy, and Haley. Mary will be doing the pro statements, Cindy will be doing the con statements, and Haley will end with the closing statement. Our topic of discussion is the causes of autism. We'll be discussing these in 5 arguments. In the first argument, a pro statement done by Mary, we'll be discussing how genetics have shown to be a strong factor in the cause of autism. The second argument, a con statement done by Cindy, will discuss how gluten, casein-free diets are being used as a treatment for autistic symptoms, along with the impact of genetic research on families. In the third argument, Mary will discuss the explanation of prenatal factors and other pro statement, along with the impact dissemination of gluten casein-free diets on the awareness of ASD. The fourth argument, Cindy will be discussing how prenatal factors actually correlate with ASD and not cause, which is another con, while also discussing the discrepancies in the MMR vaccine case. In the last argument, Mary will discuss the overview of vaccine research and go into fatal exposure to drugs or other toxins that may lead to ASD. She will describe how inaccurate research can affect society, then end with how certain drugs and infections can lead to ASD. To end the debate, Haley will be doing our closing statement. She will elaborate on the factors that influence the cause of autism. He will also discuss the issues that have been brought up in each of the 5 arguments. And Haley will also factor in the effectiveness of ABA treatment. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys enjoy our debate.
Alright, genetics have been shown to be a strong factor in autism. Many studies have found multiple chromosome mutations, deletions, and replications may be the cause of autism. As one looks farther into the genome, these random and sporadic mutations seem to take place. The International Molecular Genetics Study of Autism Consortium have been one of the very few international teams that have carried out complete genome scans of those with autism to see if there's any genetic similarities. Those with autism seem to have more CNVs, which are copy number variants, and these CNVs or mutations are in the long arm chromosome of 17 and 15. Also including mutations of some chromosomes. There can be a gene replication or deletions, and this may lead to ASD, such as the UBE3A gene. If it is deleted, the child may have Angelman syndrome. However, if the gene is replicated, it may lead to the child having ASD. Research on family twin studies have propelled the genetic cause for autism even further. And one study done in 2008 found heritability rates for boys to be 0.73 and for girls to be 0.87. Another twin study has looked at 277 pairs of twins and found that monozygotic twins, if one twin has ASD, it's an 88% chance that the other twin will have ASD too. While in diazygotic twins, if one twin has ASD, that percentage rate goes down to 31% chance that the other twin will have ASD. Another study looked at heritability of ASD following up with families that already have 2 kids on the spectrum and seeing how likely is that third kid to have ASD. This study resulted that the third child would have 46% chance of developing ASD if it was a boy, and the child would have a 15% chance of developing ASD if it was a girl. The lower percentage rate of heritability of ASD in girls may be the fact that girls have some kind of protective factor that reduces the penetrance of the ASD genotype. while boys do not have this protective factor at all, and it seems to be a dominant genotype for them, and also it's fully penetrant. And they do not know why girls have it less than boys and why is it so higher in boys than in girls. They have tried to figure these protective factors out, because if they could find what protects girls over boys of this, they may be able to fix this situation in utero, and so they wouldn't have to have a child born on the spectrum. But also there's so many genetic components to ASD and so many mutations that it's hard to pinpoint what specific gene or specific chromosome that will cause autism. And so having more and more of these genetic studies will help propel this type of research further and to understanding what is causing these random mutations and to understanding the genetic factor of autism.
Now, as my team member has previously stated, that these studies on the genetic causes of ASD have in fact found links between those chromosome mutations and then these deficits and these negative impacts on neural transmissions in the brain. It can also be argued that the benefits, and especially treatment-wise benefits, that this research has yielded is in fact quite minimal as of present findings. And that is because individuals with ASD, even though there is a very strong genetic component to the cause of ASD, the mutations in the chromosomes are in fact quite differentiated across individuals. And so what this means is that if we ever did find, or even there are even currently some research to suggest that there is treatment which can target a certain mutation in a chromosome, what you actually find is that you can't really generalize it to the entire public, because the number of individuals in which this certain type of chromosome, this certain part of a chromosome is impacted is in fact quite a small number with regards to the entire population of ASD individuals. And so Chen, Miller and Rosenstein in 2003 have actually even argued that unlike other research in this field that focuses on treatment, in that there is a possible positive side effect of the treatment towards its participants, research that just focuses on causes, and particularly genetic causes, doesn't really provide any positive impact to the participants involved. So the child involved, the sibling involved, the parents, along with any other family members that are involved in the study. And therefore, we should really consider, they argued, the cost-benefit ratio when conducting studies like this. And so the first point that I would like to raise on this con side, focusing on the negative impact that research on the causes of ASD have created on society, is that I would like to first argue a more biological standpoint. And that is one, a biological theory on the cause of ASD that has been widespread in the community, called the leaky gut syndrome. And they attribute the leaky gut syndrome as a primary cause of ASD. So what the leaky gut syndrome is that it's actually led to a quite popular gluten or casein-free diet. And I say gluten and casein-free because they're quite different in that gluten is found in wheat products and casein is found in dairy products. In fact, chemically, their structures are quite similar. And that's why it's not unusual that children are placed on either or both diets. And so a research by Reichelt, Knivesberg, Lind and Nodland in 1991 suggested that some individuals are unable to break down these gluten or casein structures, and then this leads to growth of bacteria, of harmful bacteria in the intestines. Now what happens is that when this bacteria grows, it causes inflammation and injury of the intestines, and then it causes from the malabsorption of the proteins, and then what it does is that it tears at the lining and it causes toxins to then diffuse from the intestines into the bloodstream. Now the gut-brain connection then suggests that these toxins that are in the bloodstream then travel to the brain, impacting neurotransmissions in the brain, which then cause these ASD symptoms that we see in these individuals. Now, this brain gut syndrome and this leaky gut syndrome was pushed quite heavily by Horvath and Perman, and you can see this in their studies in 2002. And so the leaky gut syndrome, based on Horvath and Perman, suggested that this was quite heavily studied in the ASD population just because of the large prevalence of gluten intolerance in the population. Now, as you can see from the visuals shown on the screen, compared to their siblings, individuals with ASD are seen to have quite a longer cycle of bowel movement. The type of bowel movements, as you can see here, they're quite runny. They don't look healthy, just in terms of physical appearances. Also, children have reported more greatly feeling of discomfort in the stomach, feeling of gas in the stomach, and it's believed that due to this high prevalence of gluten intolerance in this population, that supposedly then this drives the leaky gut theory. However, a study by Mulloy, Lang, O'Reilly, along with a number of authors in 2010, and this is just one study among many studies, have aimed to disprove that theory, is that even though there may be a high prevalence of gluten intolerance in this population, it doesn't necessarily mean that the leaky gut syndrome is true, or the brain gut theory is in fact true, and it does not. Horvath and Perman study does not prove this. And so what these authors have found is that regardless of which group children were placed in that they were either placed on control or with a gluten-free diet, there was no significant signs of improvement. And any type of improvement was caused due to the accidental diagnosis of the child to have gluten intolerance. And therefore, what we should consider is that this third variable is that rather than the leaky gut syndrome or the brain gut theory, it might be in fact the discomfort in the stomach that may be causing behaviors or perpetuating or escalating behaviors more than usual, but there surely isn't yet to be a causal link found between gluten intolerance and ASD. And however, the widespread nature of this leaky gut syndrome and this brain gut connection has caused a lot of parents to place their children on gluten or casein-free diets, and this negatively impacts society in general and these children, because what you find is that children with ASD already have quite restrictive diets, and to place them on further more restrictions will further harm their bodies, will cause negatively impact the amount of nutrition that they take in. And what you also find is that it comes at a heavy cost to the family in terms of stress in preparing the meals, and also the financial burden of finding foods that are organic and that fit this criteria of gluten and casein free, which may not necessarily have any impact to the child and to their ASD. And so therefore it's quite a great example of how research around the causal links of ASD may negatively impact society and therefore may pose danger to the child themselves.
While there is no causal link, that there may be still a correlational effects that gluten-free diets has on those with ASD. Gluten casein-free diets may help those with gastrointestinal issues that those with ASD tend to have. It also may still have an effect on self-stimulatory behaviors. However, there is a need to regulate this dissemination of research on those diets. Even with the lack of evidence supporting the theory, it has kept the research of autism causes open to one's interpretations. However, prenatal factors tend to have a role in a child developing autism. Prenatal factors have been studied and in some cases have shown to contribute to the development of autism. Unlike diet theories, prenatal factors have been extensively looked at, but also like genetics, there is a lot of variable variables that contribute to the cause of autism. One of these variables is that if the child is born with a low APGAR score after 1 minute, if the APGAR score is less than 6, then the child is at increased risk of developing autism. As seen as an example of an APGAR score card, you're looking at the child's skin color, are they breathing, how are their crying is after 1 minute of birth. Another one is that if the child has reduced oxygen during childbirth, they are at an increased risk of ASD as well. Also, premature birth may increase the risk of ASD because of all the related factors that go along with premature birth, such as reduced oxygen or low APGAR score after a minute after birth. There is neonatal jaundice that could contribute to an increased risk of ASD. Also, prenatal stressors have shown to be also an increased risk of the child developing ASD. The possible increase of prenatal stressors have shown that if the mother is under a lot of stress, whether that be work, personal life, diet, depending on how the child is in utero, could later affect how the child is diagnosed with autism. Prenatal exposure to, say, formaldehyde or any other kind of toxin while the mother is pregnant could also increase the risk of developing ASD. Delivering by an elective or an emergency cesarean section, this depends on the complications of the mother having complications during birth, while having extended time in the womb, or depending on the mother's condition of the womb, whether it is a tipped uterus or a small birth canal, may affect how the baby is born. Also having emergency C-section, the baby might have been struggling to survive in the womb or having that lack of oxygen like noted above, and getting less of that blood and oxygen from the mother can result in having the child having developmental delays or developing autism. Having the parents know about the knowledge that this could happen during prenatal factors and being aware that avoiding these sort of toxins that could affect the baby or the fetus should be avoided, and also having them take precautions of not being as stressed, either taking less time at work or having a different diet may help to reduce these prenatal factors that could result in your child developing autism.
The prenatal studies that were mentioned previously by my team member, while may have a correlational link to ASD, there is yet to be a study that actually clearly defines a causal link between these prenatal factors and ASD. And in fact, regardless of whether or not a causal link is found, it is simply quite a small piece of the pie when we look at it in terms of the retrospect of the number of factors that may cause ASD. And so what that means is that parents can be more cautious. However, in terms of how much power they have to prevent their child from having ASD based on these prenatal factors alone, their power is quite limited. And so the final point that I would like to make on how research on the causes of autism and the spread of this research has negatively impacted society, and that is the measles, mumps and rubella vaccine and its supposed link with ASD that was quite infamously marketed and spread in the public and created quite a strong reaction from the public. So this MMR vaccine theory was first published by Wakefield and his colleagues in 1998, in which they theorized that the MMR vaccine had caused inflammation in the intestines, which causes rupturing in its walls, and therefore it led to harmful toxins entering the bloodstream, and this then causes it to impact the neural system and led to the signs of autism that we see in individuals. So it is quite similar to the leaky gut syndrome. Now, since the publication of this study, and this is a study found by Chatterjee and Moffat in 2011, based in the UK. So in 2002 and 2003, there was a drop in the number of children that were vaccinated with the MMR vaccine from 92% to 82%. In some areas, it went as low as 62%. And then in 2006, they compared the number of children that took vaccines and found that compared to other vaccines, the MMR vaccine had a 65% lower rate in children. Additionally, in 1998, there were only 56 cases of measles in the UK. However, this had jumped to 449 by 2006. Now, similarly, these results were also seen in the United States, but it was shown in quite a different manner. So as you can see from the visual displayed on the screen, is that there was no noticeable rise in the cases of measles for quite a time until the sudden spike in 2014. Now, this graphic is published by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the cause of the spike in 2014 was due to an outbreak in a theme park in California, where there is typically quite a lot of children, and it was most likely perpetuated by the fact that a number of these children that were in the theme park that were affected were not vaccinated, and this led them to spread the measles quite easily to other populations and to other kids that were also unvaccinated, and is quite a strong proof of the number of unvaccinated children in the United States. Now, Dewey in 2011 has basically given an update on what's been happening with Wakefield and his colleagues, and they have found that Wakefield's study has actually breached a number of ethics codes, in that certain medical records of children that they said were included in the study did not match up with what was actually published. And it was also found that there may have been a conflict of interest, because Wakefield was currently in the middle of a lawsuit with a company that manufactured MMR vaccines while he was conducting this study. And additionally, 10 out of 12 of Wakefield's co-authors had actually admitted back in 2004 that the data was unable to support this theory of a causal link between MMR vaccines and ASD. However, the impact of this study in itself has been quite strong and this is a lot due to the number of advocates of this theory, particularly celebrity advocates such as Jenny McCarthy and even Donald Trump. And because of its marketing and the way that it's been spread into the public, this unregulated research is research that has not been based on a strong evidence-based method, and a population that has not been educated properly on how to interpret findings such as these, it's actually led to a lot of these children missing out on such a crucial vaccine that is just a common part of their, that should be a common part of their medical history.
Although the impact of inaccurate research, particularly that's marketed well to the public, such as through celebrity advocacy, can lead to negative impacts as seen as the MMR vaccine research. But it also shows that how powerful, if somebody of higher status gets behind research, can affect the market completely. It has shown that many people had stopped vaccinating their children because of this popular kind of publicity that they should not do this because it's linked to autism, even though the research is kind of inconclusive, but it also shows how positive of an impact it actually did have because people stopped vaccinating their kids. With situations like these, though, it's good to revisit the Professional and Ethical Compliance Code 9.09, which is accuracy and usage of data, making sure that they do not omit findings that can alter interpretations of research. Also, the code states to take steps to correct errors before publishing and avoid misinterpretations, because I think that's what happened. The research made it look like this was causing it, but it might have just been an error in the data, and people took with it and ran with it, which in turn negatively impacted people not vaccinating their kids. But on the flip side, if popular figures went behind like the genetic research and went behind all the other type of research of the causes of autism, there might be a surge of understanding of there's multiple factors that are happening when a child is diagnosed with autism, because there isn't quite a single definite answer to how this child developed autism, because it could be genetic, it could be prenatal, but it can also be an exposure of some kind of drug or some kind of infection, which some drugs such as anti-epileptic drugs exposure, or even some acne drugs could affect the fetus and lead to speech and language disorder or autism in general. This is due to the abnormal dendritic pruning and cell migration that you see in child development or in brain development. And also if the mother is infected or exposed to rubella, widespread affects the embryologic development of that could lead to ASD. So if the mother goes to some place that rubella is not vaccinated for, or she's not vaccinated for rubella, the child may get exposure to that, and then the embryo that is developing within the side of the mother's womb could be affected and lead to ASD.
In closing, there are a variety of factors that influence the cause of autism, whether they are based on research or pseudoscience. The role of genetics pays huge contribution to the cause of autism. The mutation of chromosomes or the replication of certain genes may determine whether a child will have autism or not. While these genetic factors are important, families with children of autism have also looked to other environmental factors, one being the diet of the child. Gluten and casein-free diets have been used as treatment for children with autism. Gluten and casein have similar chemical structures, and in some individuals there's an inability to break down these properties, which can lead to excess peptides in the body. The excess peptides bind together with opioids, which then lead to ASD symptoms. However, research has shown that these diet-centered treatments do not have clear empirical tests with good reliability. When examining the cause of autism, prenatal factors also come into play. The spread of information about the cause of autism and the awareness of ASD affect what is seen and done in the environment in the womb right before birth. However, the prenatal studies suggest more correlational relationships rather than causation. Additionally, research has been conducted about a supposed leak between ASD and the MMR vaccine. Not only were vaccines a concern, but fetal exposure to drugs and other toxins raised alarm. It was theorized that the MMR vaccines led to harmful toxins in the bloodstream, which then led to autism. However, further research and data has shown that this theory was unsupportable. Because of the dissemination of information about the causes of ASD, the treatment choice for the public has been very impacted. Celebrity advocates and marketed treatment plans have affected the way ASD is seen and its cause. Because of the widespread advertising of treatment plans that include gluten-free diets or avoidance of vaccines, false information is widely spread. Parents choose to opt out of vaccines for their children because what they have seen in the media. Media coverage reaches far more people and is more easily accessible and understandable than journal articles. When parents have reported anecdotes regarding the bettering or worsening of symptoms due to a gluten casein-free diet, it is important to remember that other research has come forth. Extraneous variables in the environment come into play, and causation cannot be nailed down by one variable, the diet. Additionally, there are health benefits to the gluten and casein-free diets that may affect the mood and general well-being of the child, but not the actual ASD symptoms. Parental reports are important, however, they can be biased due to the relationship with their children. Even though the direct cause of autism is still a mystery, applied behavior analysis therapies are best suited to give those with ASD the skills needed to improve their quality of life. Applied behavior analysis provides intervention that focuses on observable and measurable behaviors, targets skill deficits, and offers replaceable behaviors to improve quality of life and skill acquisition. BACB Compliance Code 2.09 states that treatment should be based on current research literature that is scientifically sound and beneficial to a client. That being said, it is up to the professionals to properly educate families about the cause of autism in treatment plans.